Hello and welcome everyone to today's show on Latoken VC TV. My name is Amit Das and I'm connecting from India. We have an interesting panel members just today and we have an interesting topic to discuss about. Today's topic would be investments in rising technology. So what are rising technology? How do they emerge? Where do they start from and how do they get into the commercial picture? We'll start whole array of things.
Looks like Amit is frozen here.
Yes. Let's start with a brief introduction about all our panel members. Let's start with Raghu. A brief introduction about you and the kind of work that you have done so far.
Sure. I'm from Princeton, New Jersey. I help with, I'm a serial entrepreneur, a strategic advisor, and angel investor. I help companies from seed to harvest. We have a large extended virtual team helping both advisory as well as execution roles. My former background is I have the company that I started or founded called InfoZen. Uh, Built systems for U.S. federal government, both on the civilian side, USA.gov, which is a citizen portal, as well as the screening system for TSA. And since then, I've been helping put together advisory, groups for CEOs, and also I've been working more on the emerging technologies, de-risk technologies such as biotech, green tech, clean tech, and especially look at cybersecurity and privacy.
Thank you, Raghu. Thank you, Raghu. Wonderful introduction. Let's move on to Tushar. Introduction about yourself and the kind of work that you have done so far, please.
Thank you, Amit. It's always a pleasure to be on this show today, always and also today. Myself, Tushar Kansal from Consultancy Ventures. Since the last 7 years, have interacted with more than 3,500 startups and almost 600 global investors. We do investments and we also handhold investors in finding the right investment opportunity. I invest both in tech and non-tech themes. Personally, in my 20-year-old corporate career, I worked for private equity practice at Deloitte and Touche, have been part of the team at Brand Capital, which is Times of India's venture arm, and was heading treasury at the Russian telecom company MTS India, where I raised almost $2.5 billion for the company, and was CFO with the Distribution Logistics. That's the company owned by Guggenheim Partners. In consultancy ventures, we are also associated with a huge number of VC funds, angel investors, and the other companies operating in the whole ecosystem. And we try and guide investments into the right channels. I'm always available on my LinkedIn, Tushar Kansal at Consultancy Ventures. Thank you so much, Amit.
Thank you, Tushar, for the introduction. Thank you, Raghu, for the introduction. Now let's move on to our main core topic, that is investments in rising technology. Before we jump on to the investment side, let's begin with what are rising technologies and where do they emerge from? Like how, for example, let's say with blockchain or AI, where do they start? Where do these people get this idea from and how does the journey begin? Let's start with this introduction first. Let's hear from Raghu.
Sure. I think, some of these technologies have been around for a long time. To give you an example, one of the companies I advise is called SplitByte. Is working with what is called secret sharing. Secret sharing originally was published by Shamir back in 1979. Similarly, AI has been around, for more than 50 years. But what has changed is some of these new things like big data, cloud, and some of these things that actually can process things, quantum computing. So the technologies, the core technologies are now able to, you have the capacity both in terms of distribution, availability of storage, the speed of computers and things like that. That is one from a deep tech perspective. Similarly, things like the pandemic actually create a cultural shift, things that were not acceptable before because of the pandemic people were put in a situation and they find it's not so bad, and some of the things get adopted, right? So there are both environmental aspects as well as technology advances that are making certain technologies possible as well as acceptable. I think so. There is both a cultural aspect as well as a technology aspect. That's how I see it. Probably everybody knows about the whole Gartner curve, adoption curve. Where it starts out, more like a hype. It's called the hype cycle, and then how it actually matures into finally where it becomes part of the mainstream. So that may be one way to look at things.
Great, thanks Raghu for introducing the scenario and the picture of the deep tech. So let's move on to Tushar. What are your views on this?
Amit, see, a lot of businesses, a lot of money chases returns, and when it chases returns, it's all about solving some fundamental problem for the human beings. And just as Uber solved the problem of finding a taxi, and just as a smartphone became the go-to platform for a huge population on this planet, so technologies start revolving around that. And also there is a trend towards finding more efficiency, and more research and development monies they go in, and they try to create more efficient technologies. And just like there was a time when solar panels had arrived, and they could not replace the oil and gas based infrastructure, because the price of producing a unit of energy from solar panels was higher than produced by oil and gas. So a lot of R&D, research and development, went into solar panels. A lot of R&D went into wind turbines, and now tidal waves, desalination, and the lithium-ion battery, and now people are talking about hydrogen batteries. So all these trends of making things more cheaper, more efficient, it leads to development of new technologies. And this whole high-tech ecosystem is a place where not only on B2C, a lot of technology gets developed for B2B purposes, and matter of fact, uh, a lot of money is chasing anyone who comes out with more efficient technology. And because of the huge bets which are available, there are a lot of people who keep on spending, putting their time into creating such breakthrough technologies. And once they get commercialized, then of course the whole there is again a different kind of dollar available for creating practical businesses around these technologies.
Great. Thanks, Tushar, for that. In addition to what Raghu just mentioned, so technology has been the emerging technologies which are currently we are using or we are listening about are here from past 50 to 70 years. The major changes that we are seeing is on the data. How efficiently can we calculate the data, or how faster can we do the data calculations? So combining these things, the next question which I want to ask is that I want to actually know the view that do we introduce any other new kind of technology, like AI has come, blockchain has come, quantum computing has come. All these are the technologies that is going to stay with us. Do we see any such kind of technology that is still in the R&D phase of some MIT or Stanford University, which is going to come in the next few years and create another storm? Raghu.
Yeah, there are a bunch of technologies, not just one. I think the cybersecurity and privacy is, the fact that you have a lot of data means that you need to be able to, handle the data better, right? One of the things is to be able to handle it at the source, and be able to make the person or the entity creating the data needs to own it and be able to share it, maybe in a way that they don't give it away, right? Right now, if you give the data, the other person or the other entity can own it, right? So there are ways to handle that. That is more like at the edge computing, where it also will reduce a lot of data traveling to places. So an example is like, for instance, FBI has a database called CGIS, like Criminal Justice Information System. You don't actually query it, in a way that, you search and get in results. All it will tell you is one particular person. You give the information and you give the fingerprint. It will tell you whether it's in or not. That's all. So that means you already have to have the data. All it's doing is confirming whether it's in the database. It's kind of a yes or no question, right? So those kind of we need to have better mechanisms of authentication and things like that. So privacy is maintained. So you're actually not, everybody doesn't have to get access to the whole thing, right? So if the purpose is just to authenticate somebody, you don't need to actually give them data. They can just say yes or no. So that's one example. The other example, I think that the whole current technologies in cybersecurity, for instance, is all either preventive or reactive. It's like you try to keep people, from breaching into the system, or like doing attacks so the system is effectively is not functioning, right? The distributed DDoS type attacks. The other thing is, if somebody has already compromised the system, they try to do damage control, right? Mitigation, how to keep it out and how to bring it back up. What the current thing is missing is kind of like the vaccine model, right? Where if you are exposed to a virus, you still don't get infected. So similar concept, if you take it to cybersecurity, the idea would be that even if the system is breached, your data is not breached. And the way to do it is using a decentralized model, where essentially things are spread out around multiple locations, and you need to have a compromise more than one location to be able to actually look at or get to the data. And even then, you can have healing systems, where if one location gets compromised, it will automatically create another node and maintain the redundancy. So those, I think the cybersecurity privacy area is going to be huge, given the infobesity, as Alan Toffler called it. There's so much data, petabytes of data being created. And a lot of that, if you look at the types of data, Gartner calls, some dark data. Dark data is data that is created but never again accessed. You might scan some document and send it to somebody. After that, you'll never look at it. It's just kind of lying there, right? And then there is, another 25%, 50% of all data is dark data. There's another 25%. Gartner calls it rot. This is redundant, occasionally used, and trivial data. So this is like 75% of all the data. And if we can handle that better, there'll be a lot of decluttering. And then there is sensitive data, and then there is data that you kind of use on a daily basis, which is only about 10 to 12% of all data. So I think if you understand what types of data there are and how we handle them in terms of storage, in terms of security and privacy, in terms of exchange data, this is data at rest, there's data in motion, there is data at the edge. So it's all about data and how you can handle it in a better framework. Because right now we are creating data at a very fast pace, but our way to handle, especially rich media data, we have not even exploded. Still the content extraction usually is just the metadata. Actual rich data, in some areas like facial recognition, it's advanced, but not in others. So.
Thank you, Raghu. Thank you, Raghu, for those insights. Coming back to Tushar, so what kind of innovations do we see in the Indian geographic region? Like, do we have any such kind of innovation around data, or innovation around any such technological field that we see that is emerging out of India? Do you have any such kind of insights?
Allow me to just give a small example on the smartphone, and then, I can definitely give a few examples about Indian specific situation also. Now the main problem, as Raghu said, is a lot of data. Now the problem is, how many passwords can one person remember? Is it possible to replace a password? And, one day my friend was telling me that, somebody told me, I sent you a message and you didn't reply. And he said, where did you send the message? Was it on SMS, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, Facebook, email? you know, how to handle all that. I mean, it's there has to be a simpler way. So I'm sure that there would be technologies which will emerge for making it simpler to access your data and to simplify your data. On the India specific theme, see, we are world 16% of world's population, and not so much land area. So naturally, food, water, and air are the three fundamental areas where solutions have to be found out. So to give you an example on water, there is free electricity for farmers in a lot of states, and they use these free electricity to pump out groundwater and use that for agriculture. And this is leading to lowering of the water table by a huge number. And this is non-sustainable. And secondly, on the upper riparian countries like Tibet is with China nowadays. So, they have built dams. And this year, there are 143 dams on the Mekong River in the Tibet region. And this year, there was a drought in Mekong Basin. And Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos, they struggled to get their agriculture going. Similarly, our rivers also originate from Tibet and dams are being built there. So, just to look at water as a theme, my sense is that a lot of R&D, research and development has to go in water as a theme. And, the price of water, drinkable water produced by desalination has to come down. And desalination plants are not, in the future, they won't be only for countries who can afford them, but the pricing will come down. So that is one. And in this year, Chicago Mercantile Exchange has added water as one of the tradable commodities. This shows you that where things are moving on water. Similarly, on air, I was reading about a particular technology only yesterday that some scientists are trying to create a machine which will mimic the tree. So it will convert carbon dioxide into oxygen, and in this process, generate energy rather than utilizing energy. So if this kind of a technology, I was very excited when Toyota had come out with the Prius, which was a hybrid hydrogen come petrol oil engine, and using hydrogen extracted from water, using it to run, to generate electricity. These are fundamental kind of technologies which will find a use in a huge number of areas around the world, wherever there is, a population density issue, or there is attack, sorry, there is, the resources are not enough and it is not sustainable. So that's why, you see the impact dollars, environmental, social, and corporate governance factors, and 950 funds managing 1/3 of the investment money in the US alone, chasing impact factors uh, because these issues are going to be fundamental in the times to come. Yesterday, I was again, just glancing around, and somewhere there was an article saying that by 2040, the water will be a deficit in the country of Pakistan. And Pakistan is home to 5 huge rivers, and seeing that kind of a country facing water issue by 2040, it's like thinking about a ticking time bomb. So technology has to come out to solve all these fundamental problems, even advanced problems like passwords. And I have been seeing some of the LinkedIn people. There are influencers on LinkedIn, so they like putting videos about new technologies, and it excites me to see what electricity being produced by tidal waves in Norwegian countries. It excites me to see personal aircrafts, based on the drone technology. And, all these technologies have to come to the forefront in a way that they can find mass adoption, because they are cheap and within the range of, affordability of a large section of the global population.
Thank you, Tushar. That was an extensive markup on the different various issues of the basic like food, water, and shelter. Now, moving to the next question, I would like to know like what kind of innovations or what kind of innovations are we looking at in terms of healthcare sciences? Like I have heard few words here and there, but I don't know exactly what are they and what impact are they going to create. For example, what is gene editing and what kind of DNA some kind of medicines or some kind of micro robotics that have been sent into the bloodstream to create or identify cancer cells or these kind of things. So what are your views and what kind of innovations are you keeping a tap on? Let's hear from Raghu.
Sure. I think that is one area where we can actually utilize technology to make ourselves better, and it's a area where there's a lot to be learned. Still, we don't know that much about the body, even though we are still exploring. And there are in terms of extending our longevity, in terms of improving the quality of life, there are different technologies. Discovery in the discovery of new drugs is one area where AI, for instance, is played an extensive role, especially right now in the to coming up with the vaccine, the mRNA technology. AI was used extensively. That's so discovery is where the success rate is very low, right? There is about under 10% success rate. Actually, people go as far as saying under 1%. So the drug discovery area, I think there is huge potential. The I think more than the treatment or curative aspect, there is also the wellness aspect. The wellness aspect is another area which I think has to come to the forefront, because it's better to prevent something happening than to fix it after. The same thing, preventive and reactive approaches. I think we have to have a holistic way where we want to look at things. How can we maintain and keep things well, as opposed to let it get into a crisis and then fix it, right? So that I think is more understood now because of the pandemic. So specifically in terms of biotech, there is transport mechanisms, there is better remote health, telehealth, because of the pandemic now, where some of these systems are very antiquated, right? You really don't need to go into the doctor's office for everything. Whatever you can do remotely now, those parts are that technology has kind of taken over. There is ways to the diagnostics area has again got a boost. The diagnostics used to be a poor cousin to the whole therapeutics, and now because of the pandemic, new platforms have come in where rapid testing. See, it's allergy testing is one example. It takes a long time to figure out, because there's so many substances that you could be allergic to, and a very expensive process. Whereas now there are platforms, because of the advances that have happened from COVID testing. There are platforms where you can get very rapid results. So a lot of times these technologies have side effects that we don't know about. They are actually developed for a certain purpose, whether it is for defense or a pandemic or whatever, what have you. But they create a platform which gets into a lot of other areas. Like mRNA is a new platform that's come out, got accelerated by the pandemic, but now they're using it for all kinds of other things, not just for the vaccines, right? So that is the kind of acceleration. And defense is another area where a lot of the technologies that we know, like encryption and all that, started out in US defense, even computers, because somebody has to fund these things, as Tushar was saying. It could be now there is a lot of private capital, but previously it used to have to come from the government in some way, right? So I think we are talking about blockchain and some of these areas. Again, blockchain technology was around for quite a bit, but when people, because of the other advances, where you have platforms where you could put in the blockchain technology very quickly and see benefits, and it had to come through sometimes through a cultish process, sometimes through a singularity, like all these crises that happen, right? We had the dot-com bust, we had the 9/11, we had but if you look at it, the pandemic was a 100-year crisis which affected the global population. So we are really coming out of a very, very huge singularity that was 100 years. And now, because given the way that people are so connected, right, globally, everybody could actually, experience the same thing and know about. See, the 100 years ago when the Spanish flu happened, I think people could not immediately get the feedback to see how others are dealing with it and all that. Now those things have accelerated where we can respond to things in real time, and you can see how shortened the vaccine development cycle became from whatever it is, 4 or 5 years down to under a year. So things are possible if, like, the circumstances and the funds and all those things come together. And I think the acceleration has happened. Peter Diamandis, who talks about technology being the kind of abundance. He calls it, technology can create abundance, just like smartphones. 20 years ago, if the pandemic had happened, I don't think we could have handled it the way we could right now, because of technology was able to take care of, like, people being able to work from home. A lot of people were able to do that. If the cloud and remote technologies were not available, it would have been very, very difficult. I mean, India, all those difficult experiences that India went through with demonetization and having bank accounts in place and all that helped so much, because people could directly, the government could support people, by transferring money into their accounts. I mean, so you have to go through some pain. Sometimes it happens in a planned way. Other times, you have to kind of do it because there's no other alternative. And so there is always a silver lining to everything. And I think that we are in a spot where hopefully the worst part of the pandemic is over, and all those things, both shifts that happened in technology and attitudes. For instance, people are now a lot more aware of mental health issues, because your work-life balance kind of went away. There was no such thing. And so how do we used to try to maintain two different personalities, one at work, one at home. And it's hard to do that because it's the same person, right? So some of these things have come to the forefront, and which is all good. I mean, specifically biotech, has been focusing only on curative, chronic type of things, situations, right? But the shift has gone to wellness and emotional health and things like that. How can technology be proactive? How can it improve the quality of life instead of just only dealing with more of the advanced curing things which people with a lot of money can afford, right? So it needs to democratize the wellness and everything across the entire population. So
Yeah, thanks, Raghu. Moving to Tushar, what do you think? Basically, in this Asian geography, what kind of healthcare? Because India is full of population, full of people, and we need health is our number one priorities. Like in terms of health, we are the test bed. Like we can see a lot of things happening around healthcare or crisis or issues. So what kind of technology enablers are you seeing, or have you seen in the recent times that is actually emerging out?
So especially in the field of generics, the companies here are doing a lot of good work. So what it means is that for every costly medicine, you have a cheaper version which is available. And it's just that if the doctor doesn't recommend the cheaper version, then people who can afford any kind of medicine, they keep on buying the branded ones. So that is a good part which is there, the presence of generics. The presence of biometric enabled ID for almost the entire population. It works very well for in times such as COVID. And one is able to track and trace basis and do a proper KYC. And so that is one. And like Raghu said, the 400 million Jandhan bank accounts, which are zero balance accounts. Imagine opening 400 million bank accounts in a matter of 2-3 years. It's no small achievement. Specifically coming to healthcare, just as artificial intelligence has affected and is continuously enriching the experience of the customer. Similarly, like one of the pharma tech companies, which is my client, they use AI to deliver a better experience to the customers who walk into their pharmacies, and they are able to use facial recognition. Then they are able to build a family tree around the customer basis the data crunching, and they are able to also do a lot of cross selling and upselling based on the crunching of data. And the turnaround time at in those pharmacies is pretty high. So what I say, my sense is that customers will get used to superior experience, and just as uh, people have stopped getting surprised if they talk to anyone about a particular thing, the next thing you see is an advertisement about that same thing on the Facebook, on Google, on any website which is using Google AdSense. You see videos. So people have stopped getting surprised, so they are getting used to it. Especially in the case of uh, records, and in the case of telemedicine, there was huge number of companies who came out to me after lockdown started, and they were all trying to solve the telemedicine puzzle in a way which makes it easier for doctors and patients to deliver, to access each other, and also for doctors to deliver quality recommendations using technology. And a lot of companies got funded also in this space. Then in on you know that CAT scan machines, MRI machines, these are they have intellectual property with companies like General Electric, and these are pretty costly. And recently a Russian company came to me. They had done a lot of R&D, and they have created MRI and CAT scan machines which give services to customers at 30% of the price of that of the current machines, and they are able to do it because their machine is cheaper. So they use 3D printing to create machines, so it works out cheaper. And then in the healthcare space, using AR, VR, augmented reality, and virtual reality can be a way of, especially on the health side, like physical fitness. And there is a company which came to me. They have gamified the exercise routines, so you are able to see the virtual reality of how this exercise will shape you up, and which parts of the body will it benefit in a positive way. And it becomes more interesting because it is gamified. Then things like surgeries performed by insertion. They can be nano robots, which can be used, and on the data crunching side, there is no end to how much R&D can go in. I think in predictive diagnostics, just as Raghu said, diagnostics is a field where a company which came to me, they have just organized the whole creation and dissemination of health records and diagnostics in a very simplified fashion over the internet. And their their counselors are able to call you at the right time, give you the right solutions at a decent price. And things will, I think, eventually move towards that. And I think IoT will also have a role to play, because a lot of these equipments, healthcare equipments, will be accessed via the internet directly by the consumer. And uh, and remote patient monitoring is one where technology will come in. And I think blockchain can be used here also for keeping patient records, and ensuring that no legacy data is washed out because it's on blockchain. And uh, and I think that's another way. There is a company, a Canadian company, which had come to me, which uses blockchain for keeping patient records. And so chatbots is one. So many times most of the questions which are asked by any layman patient, they are pretty generic, very simplified, simple questions. So a chatbot can be used to answer those questions and provide the initial information. And so these are pretty much what I've seen on the healthcare side.
Thank you, Tushar. Coming back to the intellectual property side of the things, uh, how important is patents required for a business? Like if a business or a business owner has n number of patents filed for him or has n number of patents with him, does it create an impression that the business is going to survive? And what kind of benefits, advantages, or maybe disadvantages, if there are any, come on the way? So, Raghu, what are your views on this?
I think, see, the patent mechanism, again, like everything, it helps people who have, money to start with, because it involves the prosecution of patents, filing, and then maintaining it. It's an expensive process. And also, if the legal system is good enough to, support that, like suppose if somebody is in violation of your patent, can you enforce it, right? So in some technology areas like biotech, for instance, biotech and pharma, the patents have become very, very important because it's like there is a regulatory process. When there is a regulatory process, people spend billions of dollars, right, to kind of get it through. And if someone takes it off, then that kind of incentive is not there. If you're not going to be able to, the pharma industry, they spend a lot of upfront money, assuming that because of the patent they are protected to kind of extract their investment back and then make money on top, right? To get to profits. It's a very extended timeline. So in those technologies, patents are very important. As you can see, I think Tushar was saying in generics is when the end of patent life cycle, it becomes okay for everybody to get into the game. At that point, it becomes a high volume, low margin play because it's all about manufacturing. The IP doesn't come into the picture. So there are whole technologies like that have happened. India has been on the innovation side more on the generics, but I actually worked with a company which has more than 100 US patents, and they were actually working with patents that are already approved, the same active drug. They create a new molecular entity, which means they use some kind of conjugation with other safe substances, so that it's the same active molecule that has already been approved by the FDA or the regulators. But they deliver it differently, right, based on the new molecular entity. They combine it with something like, for instance, one company that I'm on the board of, Sonnet Bio. They use body's natural mechanisms. Like, see, we know how to kill cancer cells, but what happens is when we do the treatment, it kills the good cells also. That's why you have huge side effects. But if you can target it so that your medicine goes only to the toxic cells, right? Then your side effects will be less. Your cure, even after the cure, you will not have side effects. It will not have affected other systems in the body. So those kind of things. So the patents are very important, intellectual property. On the other side, people also use it to block advancement, because if you look at just the pharma world, there's a lot of data that goes into clinical trials, right? The failed trials are not shared with others. There's a lot of rich information that can be used to accelerate things if the failed data were shared across for everybody. But that becomes proprietary. So the proprietary nature also prevents, it acts as a barrier to advancement, because only a small number of people use it. There's no it's not shared widely. So I think regulation, the patent mechanism can be improved, and also now with the data technologies that are available, it's easy to see, and easy to copy very fast also. So I think the laws will change soon, where it is not purely like the first to whoever is the first to file. Somebody else might have actually come up with it. I mean, we all know the story of Edison and Tesla and Bell, and where somebody might have already actually invented it, but they just didn't patent it, right? So those kind of things are less likely to happen. if we have access to everywhere. But IP protection is important, but it cannot be so much that nobody else can have access to it. And I think the current regulatory process really has to be looked at, because that's what is causing these patents to become so much more valuable. If people were able to use a micro model as opposed to the kind of macro models we have, where it's all or nothing, right? You either have the patent or you don't. Where the small improvements that you do don't give you the same small paybacks. It's all like whoever owns the main mothership gets to call all the shots, right? So I think those kind of, then there is all kinds of traditional technology like Ayurveda, which has been handed down for ages, like the yogas and all that. And at least from a lot of the older cultures, there was no such thing as intellectual property. It was all about spreading what is good for universally, right? So there is a lot of metric to that. But again, commercial businesses want to go after profits, right? So we have to have a way where both can happen, but we don't have so much for all or nothing, zero sum type of thing that patents create. So I think there is a good regulatory issues that will come around, where you can the patents maybe can be for much less time, so that the 18 years is very long period.
Thanks, Raghu, for that. Tushar, what are your views on the patent and the intellectual properties in the Indian landscape, and what kind of improvements are we looking at when we are considering if someone is filing a patent or someone is filing a patent in India? So, yep.
So Amit, I think Raghu gave a very beautiful reply, and what is thing? You see, if you are a humanist, then in the capitalist world, you are considered to be a leftist, and what I mean to say is that intellectual property is a good thing. If it goes too far, it is a bad thing. And I am personally a part of a country which is where the middle class is I think around 45%, 50% of the population, and there are restraints and limits around the paying capacity. And then if you imagine somebody would have created a vaccine of COVID, patented it, and said that it is not available for less than $100 or probably $200, then it doesn't sell in a country like India. The government has to step in, and the moment government step in, it becomes it's like a leftist kind of action. So that's the whole thing. I'll tell you a very interesting example. There is this milkshake joint in Connaught Place in Delhi by the name Kevinters. So I used to go there since 35 years, have my shake. And so I started seeing Kevinters open in every nook and corner of Delhi. And I said, wow, Kevinters is opened up everywhere. This guy has become big, and it was just a single shop where students used to go. So this time when I went there, he had removed his Kevinters board, and his board was Shakes and More. So I said, you have a 40-year-old brand. What are you doing? He said, somebody stole my brand, patented it, and now Kevinters is everywhere, and I am no longer Kevinters. So, it was actually quite amazing to see the power of intellectual property. Having said that, when I deal with startups and they have created something with so much of effort and putting hours behind it, they're not bothering about money, and they create a beautiful technology, I fully back the fact that they have a right to enjoy the fruits of that technology, and that is possible through intellectual property. Look at the business model of Y Combinator. They give you money very fast, and they say that if you earn this money fast, you can return it as a debt, as if it was a debt, and you can give us a little bit of interest on that. So it incentivizes risk taking. It incentivizes application of resources and effort to create something new, something different. And if you don't incentivize that, if you don't incentivize people who fail a lot, but then they keep on trying new things, if you don't incentivize those kind of people, innovation will never be possible. Then we are living in a Soviet Union kind of place where everything will be done by the government. And just to give you one more example, little bit controversial, the investors say since the last 10-15 years that there are two big consumer countries in the world where the GDP growth is more than 6-7%. One is China, one is India. Now, because of being a single party government, China is where it is. It's created a global record from $0.5 trillion economy to $14 trillion economy in a matter of 30 years. And I'm not checking the numbers. I don't know anybody can check them or not, but it's still an achievement. Now, the second country which is available for the taking is India, which is growing at 6-7%, which the median age is 29 years. 600 million people are below the age of 30. They are big time consumers because they are very aware. They have smartphones. They have the phone on which they can see what the world is doing. In any case, English is a language here. So people are very aware as to what the world is doing. Now, in this kind of a country, if you don't incentivize intellectual property, then you will keep on shouting brain drain to the US, brain drain to the US for another 25 years. So end of the day, the ecosystem of supporting these people who put that kind of an effort to create something different, something efficient, something new has to be there. I was talking to some startups, and one of them said that Tushar, finding the first check is sometimes not so easy, and I fully agree with that. It's not easy. Now, in case you have a intellectual property backed funding available, like Singapore is globally number one. If you want to get funding, by collateralizing your IP, then it incentivizes innovation. And on the healthcare side, I still agree that the governments have to be more active, because there are constraints around as to what people can pay. Or you can have a Western kind of system where everything runs on insurance, everything is super costly, and everything on the healthcare side is very beautiful, but it is super costly, so you better have insurance. So either you have that kind of a model, or you have a mixed kind of a model with generics plus intellectual property. End of the day, if a thing is either on the right hand side or the left hand side and not in center, it is not the right thing. So achieving that center, that balance, that is what is called for in the case of intellectual property.
Great, thanks, Tushar. Beautiful ideas and beautiful use cases that you have given. Next, I want to ask about any recent investments that you have made in this rising technology, which you want to share, which you're excited about. Any such investments that you can remember or you're closely working with, Raghu?
You're on mute, Raghu.
Sorry, I look for deep tech companies which have more of a de-risk model. So they already have the MVP and some customer traction, and also create social impact. That's kind of where I look at right now. It's and in technologies, green tech, biotech, and cybersecurity and privacy is, of course, close to my heart. So one of the things that is very interesting is that we have a company with a strong IP in biotech, which I was mentioning, more than 100 US patents. And now the funding has come from Singapore, and an exit is happening in the US. So it is amazing to see that kind of thing, which is leveraging, and also it's unusual because, as I told you, all the IP in the in the pharma area in India has been on the generic side. Innovation, they call it innovation, but it's innovation in manufacturing, but not on the IP side, in the discovery side, if you will. So it is. It shows that those kinds of things are possible, and the government and other ecosystem like funding, the investors and can actually change the game, because if you have role models, things change. That's just like in anything else, right? So you have to highlight those role models, and this is one company that has really been able to provide this kind of thing, where with a very minimal staff, and they've been able to get patents, global patents, and these are on blockbuster drugs, as you will see. These are drugs with more than $1 billion in sales worldwide, and they look at the unmet needs and have created a new molecular entity that can address those unmet needs using the same drug, which has already been approved, but it delivers it differently, either targeting, or it gets rid of the the side effects in a way that say one another. I'll just give you one more example. There is a company called Metamodics, which is tried to simulate the effects of bariatric surgery. Right, bariatric surgery is called gastric bypass, where they basically shunt out your stomach. It directly goes around the stomach into the intestine, so that this is for very high end obesity and diabetes. And but the problem with that is it's irreversible. Your quality of life suffers very badly. You can't eat the same kind of things, because what used to be processed in the stomach doesn't happen anymore because you're bypassing it. This Metamodics has developed a very ingenious way to simulate it, but in a reversible way. What they do is they put like a valve in the part that connects the intestine, with the stomach, right? And then they have a sleeve, like a very thin polymer sleeve, which prevents interaction across the intestinal wall. So it is essentially doing what bariatric surgery was doing, but this procedure to install it and remove it can be done in under 30 minutes. And so they've shown amazing results, in the studies, how it can help very, very obese people as well as highly diabetic people to get off medication, lose tons of weight without. It is essentially tricking the brain into thinking that see, because you are eating stuff, but it doesn't actually, it's not getting into your system, right? So but it is done in a way that it is reversible. So you can actually go on this for 6 months or a year, and then slowly adjust out, and then you can remove it. So it's not like it's going to affect you forever. So these kind of ingenious technologies, this is mostly engineering. There is no computers involved. It's a reversible, like a very, very simple, low cost implant. Which so that for diabetics in India, see, the high end diabetics, if it gets very bad, it requires amputation, things like that, because you cannot treat it anymore. There's no, it's unmet need, as they call it. Like so it is the large populations in India, Asian countries, the huge amounts of population, hundreds of millions have diabetes, for instance. So technologies like this, which are not very high cost. I mean, this is patented also. So patent is important, but the lower cost of the technology, so that the patent cost rises if there is huge investment that has been done, right, and they're trying to extract that back, the initial investment they've put. If the technology itself is low cost, patent is good, because it helps spread some new technology worldwide which is affordable. I think that is something that everybody needs to kind of understand. They have to develop things that are affordable and have social impact, right? So social impact needs to be a very important criterion, and so that's where I see technologies, the jugaad kind of thing from India, because by nature you have to make it work with what is available or what is affordable. I think that mindset, that culture needs to come to global marketplace.
Thank you, Raghu, for that. Tushar, do you want to add any points here?
Yeah. I just forgot one point which I was making earlier, that if a company is surrendering their intellectual property because they are operating out of China, then I would rather say they operate out of India and enjoy the benefits of a very healthy IP protection system. So that was one thing which I left out. On the technology piece, Raghu's picks are very exciting. I wish I can have a look at them. But from my side, it's a robotic company which has created robots for robotic scavenging. So, manual scavenging has been stuck down by the Supreme Court here in India. And so, it's a very abhorrent kind of practice. And, this robotic scavenging will definitely pick up. And then, there is a company which is, sometimes taking help of psychiatrists is considered to be taboo here in this part of the world. And, there are some questions which people raise and stuff like that. So this company is bringing simple psychology for young people, and for even for school going children, through an app, and at very affordable prices, delivered directly on the app across the homes. That is, and there is another company which, although it is in the sector which is already mature now, which is BPO and call center business, but they are actually an impact company. 52% of their employees are women. 75% are from weaker sections of the society, and from tier 2 and tier 3 towns. So they take resources from tier 2, tier 3 towns. They take even people who could not clear their 12th class. They train them for 6 months at the cost of the company, and make them employable. And so, their workforce is very committed towards the company, and this company is growing 12x year on year. So that is one impact company which I work closely with as well.
Thank you, Tushar, for that. Coming to the end of the session, before we end the session, do you have any closing remarks that you want to give away to the audience watching this TV? So, Raghu, any closing
Sure, I
remarks?
think we are in a very exciting time. As I said, it is from a 100-year singularity. So there is a lot of opportunity for new technologies, new entrepreneurs. So it's a very exciting time. I think the important thing is to look at how the cultural attitudes have shifted, what new technologies have come that have opened up areas into which you can be the first mover and potentially get IP and things like that. I think thinking out of the box, it's very easy now to put some of these technologies and move quickly, because the entrepreneurial ecosystem, I think, is now worldwide. That's one of the things, like VCTV has enabled investors and the funding to be available to entrepreneurs globally. So it's an exciting time. I think reach out to Tushar or me, or people like that on VCTV, and you should be able to move forward your dream in terms of whatever the ideas that you have. And you can reach me on LinkedIn at Raghu S. Rao. Happy to discuss and see how I can be of help.
Thank you, Raghu. Tushar, your closing remarks.
Yeah, it was my pleasure to be with Raghu on the show today. I thoroughly enjoyed his views, very deep, very incisive. And thank you, Amit, for, again, for having me on the show today. So for any startups who are looking for help at any stage of their journey, whether on the P&L side, business side, or on the balance sheet side, whether to raise funds or to get access to more business, or to get access to consulting or mentoring, I'm available always. Tushar Consultancy Ventures on LinkedIn. And please feel free to reach out even if you want to clarify some things. I'm always available, and happy to work more closely with all of you. And thank you, VCTV, once again.
Thank you, Tushar. Thank you, Raghu. It is always a great pleasure to talk to you on various different topics. So until next day on the next show, I will be meeting again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.